parent-teacher conference. I'm giving you a moment for your emotional reaction to that. I get the email, time to schedule. No problem. We had a third grader and a first grader. The other kids were in preschool. And I talked to my husband about it, and he's like, oh, yeah, well, the kids are doing fine. I said, yeah, it's true. Nadav hasn't asked for a lot of play dates, though. That's Nadav behind me. He was 6. So I sent an email to the teacher, hey, if you don't have any academic concerns, we'd like to talk about social stuff. Is that okay? I get an email back in about 12 seconds. Sure, could you come early? This cannot be good. So sure enough, we get there at 8:30 for a 9:15 conference for the first of the day. And it's not just my son's teacher, it's also the specialty teachers. So there's 3 teachers, and my parents, or my husband and I, just the parents. And they have some concerns. They've noticed that although Nadav is a great leader, kids look to him on the playground, what should we play? When something changes in the schedule in the classroom, or there's a new teacher in the room, they seem to look to him for his reaction, and they're really taking their cue from him. They've noticed that he doesn't like to partner with other kids in the class. He doesn't like to work with a partner. That if somebody doesn't grasp something as quickly as he does, he kind of writes them off. That he's dismissive of other people's ideas if he feels they won't be as efficient as his or as awesome as his. That he's kind of braggy. My husband and I were really concerned about this. When I was 6, we moved from the East Coast to the Midwest. And when you move to another country like that, you learn a new language. So I was on the playground at 6 at my brand new school in 2nd grade, and I learned a new word, kike. Know that word? Kike is to Jewish as nigger is to black. I did not know that word, but I knew it could not be good. Especially when, about 30 seconds later, I found myself pinned against the brick wall next to the Foursquare that I had been waiting in line to play, and kids were throwing rocks at me. And the 2 teachers who were on the playground for recess were watching. Now, my mom was a teacher, and I know that, and I'm going to put this in big capitals, teachers are good, because my mom was a teacher, and she told me. So I ran behind the teachers because I was pretty sure the kids wouldn't throw rocks at them. And they didn't. But I went home that night, and I asked about this word. And I heard other words, like principal's office, because my mom was a teacher at a different school. And she knew from the district that we were the first Jewish family to move into this rural area in Ohio in maybe ever. And that my dad had taken a number 3 position in the business in the town. And that there were some people who weren't so happy about that. So to be looking in my son's beautiful eyes and think, I could be raising a bully. I could be raising a kid who uses his intelligence and athletics and natural leadership abilities to hurt other kids' feelings, to make them feel less than. I gotta tell you, not only is it easy to call a kid a bully and write them off, you can write off the parents pretty easily too, can't ya? Must have learned it at home. Where did they get this? This is a 6-year-old kid. If he's doing this, he's seeing it someplace, isn't he? I'm not sure that's true. I'm not sure it isn't. Although I can tell you that the behaviors that we were seeing in our son, we haven't seen with our other kids up until this point. They're 3, 5, 7, and 10. And my husband and I are real careful about our social interactions and what we show our children. And yet, as we've seen with 3-year-olds in the classroom, humanity kind of comes out, right? I'm actually not sure that the only reason that we see bullying with 3-year-olds is because they go to preschool sooner. I think we just see it sooner. I think that those behaviors are often just kind of instinctual. Power tastes good. And I don't think it only tastes good if you are in the learning care center. I think it probably tastes good at home, right? I think it tastes good wherever you get a taste of it and nobody says, oh no, this is not acceptable. So my husband and I had a long talk with each other. We said, what are we gonna do to make sure this does not fly without breaking our son's spirit? We want to raise a natural leader. We like that kids look to him, but he has to learn to use his power for good, Batman. So we came up with a plan, and we went to Nadav. And we said, hey, we're going to do a project. This is not news in our house. We do a lot of projects. Okay. You're going to come home each day, and you're going to tell us one really admirable thing about another child in your class until we have a list for every single person in your class. And he says, okay. Why? And we said, well, we're not sure you're seeing it. And we want you to learn to see what's excellent about other people, because then you can have more fun, right? The games that you think of, you'll know who's great at what, who to ask to be involved in what way. My first grader already wanted to be the president of his student council when he gets to 8th grade in his K through 8 pretty small parochial school. And we said, this will help you become president of student council, when you can learn to see other people's skills and use them. You know, we want that for you if that's what you want by the time you get there. You need to know how to do this. So make paper airplanes. He loves to make paper airplanes. And we had talked to his teacher and cleared this. And when you've got a collection of everybody's admirable skill, admirable trait, we're going to go to class, you and I, and you're going to tell your friends, your classmates, what these skills are. And you're going to have written it on a paper airplane. You're going to fly them the paper airplane. He's like, oh, a presentation in front of the class with my mom. This is awesome. And he's in, right? That's his carrot. Getting to stand up in front of a group of people, shy, not so much. And paper airplanes and people paying attention to him. This sounds good. And the first 5 or 6 were easy, right? He'd come home and he'd say, Yonatan is amazing at soccer. He tries, no matter where the ball goes, he is all over that field. He's really, what's that word? Persevering? Yeah. He perseveres. I said, great, write that on a paper airplane. I admire Yonatan because he perseveres. So the first 5 or 6 of these were great. They were easy. They were no problem. And then he came home and he said, Jacob has a cool DS. And we said, oh, sorry. Let's talk about what trait means. Let's talk about what character means. You don't get to admire somebody because of what they have, or what they were born with, or even really what they are. Because he tried, I guess Sophie has pretty hair. We said, no, that's not going to fly either. You've got to tell me something they do, something you really admire about someone because it's something they do. Okay, so there are 17 kids in his class, and he gets through the next 3 or 4, but with a lot less enthusiasm. But he's getting pretty creative, and we're pretty proud of him. He says something like, oh, you know what? Sophia's excellent with animals. And I said, oh. So he tells me a little story about that, and he writes down, I admire how Sophia is brave and good with animals. I said, great, I really like that. That's a good one. But there's a few kids in his class that he really doesn't like that much. And you know, I've known these kids since they were 2, and I don't totally blame him, but it doesn't matter. You know, we got a point to make, and we're gonna make it. And he's really dragging his feet now. I can't think of anything. I don't know. They weren't there today. And I realize that even though I think this is a really worthwhile project, we're beating down his self-esteem a little bit. We're basically saying to him, you know, you're not a good person if you can't do this. And it was really taking a toll on him. His posture as he'd do this project was kind of changing. And his eye contact was changing, and his attitude was changing. So my husband said to me, let's do it for him. I said, oh, I really like that. So we said, hey, Nadav. And his dad sat up one night, made 17 paper airplanes, new ones. And I came to him with this pile of paper airplanes, and I said, for every admirable trait you give us about somebody in your class, we're going to give you one about you. And he said, that's 17 admirable traits. Can you think of those? I said, 5 minutes. It'll take me 5 minutes. And my husband and I worked hard on this. We wanted him to know what we admire about him, and we wanted to be things that he does, right? So we made a list, and I started writing them on paper airplanes, and as he'd give me one, I'd give him one. And he would see all of a sudden that we really admired his ability to express his emotions, his bravery in climbing trees, we talked about all these things we really liked about him. And there are a couple of kids he said to me, he came home, he had 2 left to do, and he came home from school and he said, I really want to finish that project, but there is not a single admirable thing about Caddy. And I said, really? God messed up with her? Her parents love her, but they are wrong. And he's like, oh, I guess not. And I said, okay, so I'm not going to ask you what you admire about her. I want you to figure out what somebody else admires about her. What do you think her best friend admires about her? And it was girls, I got to admit it. I have 4 boys at home, and we are a very boy-centric household. He can't totally figure out why God made girls except for his mom. So it makes it that much harder for him to figure out admirable traits about girls. But I said, her parents admire something about her. Her best friend admires something about her. Your teacher admires. I said, if you can't think of something, ask them. Not in a judgmental way, just ask them. Hey, what do you, I noticed you're really good friends with her. What do you admire about her? So he did. And we went into school on the day at circle time, and he sat in front of the class, and he had paper airplanes in his lap, and they were sitting on the rug, and he was sitting in a chair. He's about this big. And he would read it, and he'd say, I admire about Kat that she includes all the girls in her play dates. Because that's what he learned. And he said to me, I kind of do admire that. I think playing with that many girls would be really hard. And 6 months later, we walked into school for the next parent-teacher conference. Different teacher, different grade. It's a small school. So we had figured she'd probably heard, right? She's the teacher. She's an amazing teacher. She's been there for many years. And we sat down, and she gave us the academic scoop, and we said, so, but how's he doing in the classroom? How's he doing with the kid dynamics? And she looked at us kind of shocked. She said, are you kidding? He's the leader of this class. And we said, well, in what way? And she said, the kids really look to him to figure out what to play on the playground and what's going to happen next. And she said, he's got a real gift for explaining things. Sometimes when there's a concept that he gets and somebody else doesn't, I'll ask him to sit with them and do some problems, and he can really explain it in ways that other kids can hear that I don't think of. And that's really fun to hear, because right now what he wants to be is a teacher when he grows up. That's been the case for about the last year, and a gym teacher. And and she said, and we said, do you have any concerns about him being braggy or bossy or writing kids off when they don't see things his way? And she said, oh no, not at all. So we asked her if she'd heard about this from last year. She said, I had not heard that, but I'm a little surprised because, people don't usually change, and he doesn't sound like that at all. Maybe it was just a phase. And I'll tell you what, maybe it was just a phase. And it's entirely possible if we'd done nothing that he would have gone through some development of his own and gotten out of it. Because one of the things I know as a family doctor for 12 years and parent of 4 kids is that a lot of things are a phase, right? I mean, a lot of things seem really awful in the middle of them, and some of them just get better. But this is something we were not willing to risk. And so we talk to our kids about what it means to be a leader and using your abilities for good. And we put it in those terms. We say, if God gave you a leadership skill, then you got to do something with it that's meaningful. And what I want to say to all of the parent educators in the room, because that's not exactly what I do. I don't coach parents except in the exam room where I do a lot of parent coaching, but it's not my job, right? I give seminars and workshops to empower parents. There are very few parents out there that want to raise a bully. There are a few, out of their own fear and their own self-loathing and things like that, that would be more comfortable raising a bully. But for the most part, parents do not want to raise bullies. But if we say to parents, your kid's a bully, they have to defend their child. They can't hear that. But if you say to me, you know what, your kiddo's been doing some things that are bullying, let's help them. We parents, we're ready to help. We just need to know an action plan. And an action plan is teaching our kids to find that kernel of goodness in other people. You don't have to be friends with them. You don't have to ever invite them over and play with them. But you have to learn to find that which is admirable in other people. It makes it much harder to bully them, and hopefully you can do it before you're pinned to the ground. Thanks, everyone.